solar energy services to folks in this territory for quite a long time. Very successful.
Third Sun Solar has been doing solar for 15 years now, and we started by doing it on our own house. I was actually working for PawPaw, who's people save energy. People wanted me to do solar on their buildings and their houses, and so my weekends got full, and I was doing solar for my days off, and I decided there's something to this, and I really love doing it. So we started Third Sun Solar 15 years ago and haven't looked back. We've grown the company quite a bit over the years, added lots of smart people. I work most of the Midwest, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, and Ohio. Most of our projects are in Ohio. Unfortunately, most of our projects are in Columbus. We'd rather have more of our projects being right here in our own backyard. That's something picking up with the upgrade Athens is doing and the visibility that people are giving to energy. We do projects that range from big factories and office parks and large buildings all the way down to residential systems. More than half of our projects are residential. We do about 3 installs a week and have expert crews that have been trained and have been doing hundreds of these installations. They're a large crew, five people running around out on the roof, in the basement, and in and out in about a day and a half or 2 days. We take care of all the permitting, all the design, all the engineering, all the paperwork. That usually takes about 4 or 5 weeks to ramp up to that. The best part of it is throwing the switch, watching the meter spin backwards. People cry, people celebrate, people have big parties. It's pretty heartening when you're helping people achieve a dream that they've had since they started reading about solar in 1981 or something. Business 15 years ago was with true believers that wanted to save the planet, wanted to have environmentally motivated folks. It cost a lot of extra money. It was an investment that might have a 20-year payback or a 17-year payback. So it wasn't about the money, it was about the environment. Sometimes it was also independence and wanting to have power no matter what happened. Today, it's about 50-50. 50% it's green, but 50% it's about the money. Actually, the price of solar has come down and the price of conventional energy has gone up to the point where today in Ohio, this is the one soundbite that if you take anything away from here and go share it with your friends and neighbors and coworkers, tell them this. Today in Ohio, solar costs less than coal. Solar costs less than the utility company. So you don't have to care about the planet. You don't have to worry about any other reasons. You can only want to save money, and you can go solar. And that's pretty phenomenal. That's my goal of accelerating the shift to clean energy that much more viable, that much more real. 1 or 2% of us that want to do the right thing just for the environmental reasons. We've got to reach the other 98% of the folks that say, I'd like to do it, but only if it pays for itself, only if it's a cost-effective decision. And so that's the big change that's happened in the last couple of years. So the other trend, financing. In California, what really blew the roof up on solar was where people could go solar for no money down, and an outside investor would own the system on their roof. Sometimes they're called leases, sometimes they're called power purchase agreements, but the largest solar company in North America, Solar City, really promoted that. And there's now a little bit of backlash from that. It's not necessarily the best way to go solar. A lot of people have figured out that if it's so good for these investors to make money off of my roof, why don't I just cut them out of it and make money off of my own roof? Having access to financing has made it possible for people to put solar up with no money down and have their savings on their monthly bill offset the payments on their financing. And so suddenly you can go solar for less money than you're currently paying to your electric company. Your mileage may vary. That statement works on larger systems that are more cost effective, the real small systems, because it costs a lot of money to do the engineering and to mobilize and get set up on the building. Those systems are more expensive per watt, and so they take longer to pay off. People are still doing them, they're great systems, but if the system is typically larger than 6 or 7 kW, that's the number of watts of the system. So our average system these days is about 7 kW, so that's about a typical residential system.
How many panels?
So the panels can range from 250 watts up to 300 watts, depending on the kind of panel. So the number of panels can really vary. But so typically a 7 kW system would probably be about 28 panels. And we've got financing set up that if you can't use your bank, a lot of times using your bank is fine, but some people, because their home equity is tapped out because they did a kitchen remodel or something, they can't borrow from the bank. We've got a financing program for solar that right there when we're talking to you, we can make the application and get it turned around in a day. So we're able to do solar. The payments are less than their current electric bill is here in Ohio. People don't believe that. They're like, oh, it's got to be sunny in California or it's got to be Arizona. But here in Ohio, solar works effectively enough to be cost effective like that. I run my entire house off solar, including heating and cooling. I used to heat with propane. I cut that out and replaced it with solar. And I charge my car, so I drive on solar. And all of it with a 6 kW array. And it's actually not pointed perfectly south either. We also run our business in town. Our offices and warehouse is 100% solar powered. So we're net zero. We actually make more power than we use. I charge my car there too, and we're probably going to the next car we get is probably going to be a plug-in hybrid, so we can start driving on solar. That's a great feeling. So we're up to 35 people now, and we're still hiring. We're actually expanding again. It's great. We are doing solar that costs less than your current coal-fired power. So that's the takeaway. When people hear that, their first reaction is it's too good to be true. And then once we do the math with them and they talk to some people that have been doing this for a couple years, they're like, oh my goodness, it's really true. Why is not everyone doing this?
What's the name of your company based on?
Third Sun Solar. It's a play on words. There's a book called Entropy by Jeremy Rifkin. Energy that's being used is tied to politics and the economy and culture. And the first solar age was wood. We were burning wood. And wood is solar power that's been stored up over the years. The second solar age is coal and fossil fuels and rotten dinosaurs from the earth. We're still in that. But we're now at the tipping point where we're going into the third solar age. And that's direct use of solar power, the most efficient, clean, easiest. It's magic. It's amazing technology. And we're truly at the tipping point now where I told you it's not about just the environment, it's about the environment and it's also cost effective. So within 5 years, solar is going to be as boring as air conditioners. It's going to be a surprise if someone builds a house that doesn't have solar. You all will probably be driving electric cars, or at least have one electric car in your family. That'll be boring. It won't be something special. And we'll be driving solar-powered electric cars, living in our solar-powered houses, going to work in our solar-powered buildings. And we won't have events like this to teach people about it because it'll be kind of ho-hum. So that's my goal. Third Sun. We're going to be in the third solar age. And we're a mission-driven business, a social benefit company. And our mission is to accelerate the shift to clean energy. And that's very intentional to use those words. The shift is happening, and it's going to happen no matter what. So our job, our goal, is to speed it up, to accelerate it, to help as many people tap the power of the sun and efficiency as quickly as possible. The other reason Third Sun is my wife and I started the business. We got 2 little babies crawling around on the ground, and the business is our baby. It's our third son, so it's a play on words.
What's the status right now with AP when you produce more than what you consume? If you have a 7 kilowatt array, there's a good chance you're going to be producing.
The utility policy with regards to net metering and what happens if you make more power than you use. So net metering is the concept of basically having the utility power your house or business, and then you add solar with no batteries, and you spin the meter backwards during the daytime if you're making more power than the building's using, and at nighttime you tap into that. So net meters, so you buy and sell, and so you can cut your bill in half. You can make 100% in power. You're not allowed to make 101%. You can't on an annual basis make more power than the building's using. So you have to be careful about that. But the net metering law was made to make solar easier and more effective, and it benefits the utility, it benefits your neighbors, and it obviously benefits our planet. Remember I said we're at the tipping point? The other reason I know that we're at the tipping point is that the utilities are getting nervous about solar. We used to be kind of like a little fly on their back that they kind of ignore and say, oh, that's nice. Now solar is cutting into their revenue. It's a big deal in California. It's a big deal nationally. It's nowhere near that in Ohio yet. That's coming. One of the ways that they're making solar more difficult is by changing the rules on net metering. So it used to be we would just have a simple meter and you could buy and sell and you could make more power in August and you could use that power in December. It's kind of a virtual battery, so you could do it on an annual basis. Now they've changed the rules and they actually make it so if you make more power in August, you get credited for that, not in kilowatt hours unit per unit, but in cash. And the cash is not at the full retail rate, it's at what they call the avoided cost. So if your electric bill, if you're paying maybe 12 or 13 cents per kilowatt hour, and you make more power than you use, everything that you make and use, you're saving that full 13 cents. But what you make more in 1 month and carry over to the next month, you're going to make maybe about 4 or 6 cents. And it gets worse. If you're with a Crest provider, if you've switched over to First Energy or somebody else, you actually get 0 right now. Now there's a rule that's being pushed through to try to change that, but right now the status is that if you have made the move to a Crest provider, including unfortunately SOPEC, under the current rules, we're trying to change that right now. Under current status, if you have solar, SOPEC's probably not a good fit for you depending on how much solar you use. If anything, we should be like California, where they're saying, no, this is good for you, Mr. Utility, it's good for the people, it's good for the economy, it's good for the planet, we're going to make it as solar friendly as possible.
So when you size the system, you try to go for August?
No, everyone's different. Some people have a very flat usage pattern. Some people it spikes in the summer, some people it spikes in the winter. So an expert system design to optimize the system is really important, where we look at your utility bill. That's the first thing we ask people when they call us and say, hey, I want to know about solar. We say, great, can you send me your utility bill? We want to look at the utility bill as much as we want to look at their rooftop or their grassy area where they're thinking about solar. And we have to really size it well. There's a lot of amateurs out there, or maybe even bad actors, that want to make as much money off of this as possible. They're not going to give the customer the very best optimized system. That's what 15 years of experience and kind of an attitude about doing the right thing. We call it the grandmother test. When I'm training new people, we're hiring new people, brilliant engineer, but they're not third son yet. So we want to make them into third son people. We say, treat this person like you would treat your grandmother. And she doesn't know anything about solar, she's trusting you, give her the very best solution. If she says, I don't care about the payback, I want 100% solar, I'm green, or it's an ethical issue, great. She's making an informed decision. Show her that she can actually do that, and she might end up economically having a lower return. Instead of a 10% return on investment, it might be a 6% return on investment. Somebody else says, it's nice to be cool, my grandkids think I'm awesome, my neighbors think it's pretty cool, but for me it's an investment. And we say, okay, we're going to make the system a little bit smaller because we want to have the best economic return. Now the other factor that goes into that is economies of scale. A large system with 100 panels, the unit cost of that system is going to be a lot less than a very small system. It's kind of like when you're building a house. Sometimes the architect or the builder says the first square foot is very expensive. As the house gets bigger, it gets less expensive per square foot. The same thing with solar. The first solar panel, we have to do all the engineering, we have to do all the project management, we have to get set up, drive to your place, go up on the roof, all that stuff. We have to put the wiring in. All that is the same cost for a 1-panel system or a 100-panel system. So if we can spread those costs out over 100 panels, that larger system is going to be a better payback. We have some big spreadsheets and the smoke comes out of the computer when we press the calculate button, but we optimize it. We actually run a multiple regression to balance the economies of scale effect of a larger system, meaning less expensive, versus this net excess generation effect of overproducing in 1 or 2 months. If you're going to have somebody design your system, why not get a real dorky energy geek to do it? And that's not me. I've got 3 dorky energy geeks that are smarter than me. But that's a great question. Is this the Earthship Talk? You're at the Solar PawPaw, the PawPaw Festival energy tent when someone walks in wondering if this is the Earthship Talk.
Can you talk a little bit about the potential solar farm that's being talked about for close to here, outside of Albany, and also in relation to that, in terms of hitting that critical mass that you're talking about, the role of large institutional users like Ohio University is the elephant in the room as far as using electricity in this area. If institutions that size will go solar, how does that affect the whole big picture?
The farm is actually, it's not being talked about, it's going to happen. It's going to be 3.9 megawatts. So that's 3,900 kilowatts. And we just talked about our average household system is around 7 kilowatts. So this is a much larger project. They're building 80 megawatt farms in California and Nevada and Arizona. So it's a step in the right direction. It won't be the largest one in Ohio. Ohio has a 12 megawatt one and has an 8 megawatt one in another location. Those large farms are very efficient to build because of the same economies of scale that we talked about. Right now we're actually working with SOPEC and Upgrade Athens, blending that power with the power that people are already purchasing through SOPEC makes it very cost effective to go solar. And the concept of going local solar versus supporting a project out of state, far away, or wind power. People buy wind power all the time. They add wind to existing Ohio State University that's contracted for wind power. But it's not on campus, it's not creating jobs, it's not as visible as what we're trying to do here at Athens County. Now, getting Ohio University to say, yes, we're going to do solar, we're going to do it big time, we're going to do it on campus, we're going to do it off campus, is a big goal of ours. And we want to push them as quickly as possible to do that. When we do that, it's going to put Athens on the map, it's going to make our economy better, and it's going to make all of our electricity stable. In Central Ohio, your retail electric rate has gone up 10% over the last 10 years, 10.6%. It's amazing. I didn't believe it until I actually looked at the data and made a graph. And so with solar, you lock it in. You know the cost of energy for 30 plus years. So that's one of the other advantages of solar is it insulates people from volatility. Think about people retiring that are on a fixed income. And so their electric bill goes from $150 a month to $300 a month. The question was about federal tax credits. Thank you for that softball. Yes, everybody say thanks George Bush.
What?
So under the Bush administration, George Bush signed into law a tax credit bill that basically gives you 30% off of your system. You spend $10,000 on your system, you get $3,000 off on your taxes. So it's a 30% tax credit, not a deduction, but a full credit. So it's a big part of solar making solar cost effective. That law expires next year. So it goes away for residential. Most people believe it will expire. They don't expect Congress to cooperate and agree on just about anything. It's certainly not that. So it's going to expire. We expect it to expire. We don't need it anymore. When that law came into effect, solar cost $7 a watt. Now solar is costing $3 a watt. So the cost has come way down. It'd be nice to have it, but the truth is, the cost of solar is so competitive with coal right now that we can live without that tax credit. What that also means is that people who decide to go solar before the tax credit goes away are getting a pretty big gift, a pretty big advantage. So if you know anybody that's considering solar or thinking about it someday, they're getting maybe about 4%, 3% more efficient each year. It's about how much power are you giving up by waiting. So people going solar now makes sense, and then because of the tax credit expiring next year, it makes sense. So if you know anybody that's thinking about solar, do it before that tax credit expires.
It has to be installed by next year?
It has to be installed before the end of next year. So placed in service in 2016. And it's going to be a big rush. It's one of the reasons we're hiring people now is we're seeing the rush already. People are saying, I'm not going to wait. And prices are going to go up. At probably the second half of 2016, prices are going to go up as ore quality is going to go down. Because of all the established companies are very busy, people are going to start going with new people that are, don't have experience.
What's your backlog now?
We're scheduled out probably about 8 weeks. We expect to fill up 2016 though pretty quickly.
Why don't the utilities appreciate us that they don't have to build more plants? And why don't they realize our past use is based on guilt of burning coal, so you're very, very careful.
The question was about utilities and whether or not they value solar, the whole issue of usage. And sometimes we can tell them, hey, we're going to be switching some loads over to electric. So people go from propane to electric heat because they want to have solar powered heat. Sometimes they want to charge their electric car. I'm not expecting the utility companies to like warmly embrace us. Some are, some aren't. When the horseless carriage came on the scene, a lot of people said, hey, stick with horse and buggy. This is just fine. This technology is great. These things are dangerous. They're noisy. They're a nuisance. Some of us might want to. There's some romantic notions about a horse and buggy. But the practicality about a car is pretty handy. And an electric car running on solar, it's even better. So cars are here to stay. Cell phones, same deal. If Marconi and Alexander Graham Bell came around and showed them the internet, they'd have no idea what it was. The amount of innovation that's come from telephones to IT and communication that we have today, night and day, huge technical leaps and bounds. If Tesla and Westinghouse and Edison came around and you pointed them to the electrical grid, they would understand how everything works because it's the same technology that was in place 200 years ago. We don't need to use 200-year-old technology just because people have already paid for it and want to continue to profit from it. We want to use 21st century technology of the sun and the wind and efficiency. The utilities are like the phone companies that didn't adapt and are now being replaced by cell phones. I think solar is replacing the old model of a centralized monopoly pretty quickly. And some utilities are going in that direction. NRG, one of the biggest utilities in the world, is embracing solar and saying, we're not going to have fossil fuel assets in the next 20 years. We're going to be phased out and we're going to be doing everything renewable. That's the way the future is, and they want to position themselves as successful in that future. $1 billion publicly traded huge utility. The CEO wrote a letter to his shareholders last year that's on the internet, and it's a fascinating 2-page document about his vision for where solar is and where it will go in the next couple of years.
What about Elon Musk's household battery? Can you get off the grid entirely?
Elon Musk, man, what an awesome guy. He could sell ice cream to Eskimos, and what he did is he got up on stage and he sold the whole world on his pretty cool battery, but it doesn't really do all the things he said it does. So you can't go off the grid with a complete modern lifestyle with a $5,000 battery. It's just, the math is not there. So what he said wasn't an untruth. It's possible for a house to run off the grid, but not necessarily if the house has teenagers or people that use lights and air conditioning. Now, that said, we probably will have more and more batteries as part of our energy mix. And the batteries will be at our houses, at businesses, out there in the utility grid. Storage is an important part of clean energy. And having, it makes sense. You use power at nighttime, the sun shines during the day. How does that all work out? Well, when we get more and more solar as part of our mix, we're going to need more and more storage. So there will be a role for storage. But going off the grid will probably not be the goal. I believe that we are interdependent. I like independence. It's a nice idea. We read Little House on the Prairie and we thought about building our own house in the middle of nowhere. I tried it. I went and built my own house in the middle of nowhere. Danny helped me build my house in the middle of nowhere. And we wanted to be independent. And I lived with batteries off the grid for 14 years. And I realized that I ran a generator in the winter, and I ran propane heat, and I did lots of things that were not on the electrical grid, but I was on the propane grid. And I realized that it was better to be interdependent and to tie in with my neighbors and to have my excess power go to their house when they're using power, and to have this big interconnected web of a utility. So I don't like the idea of a centralized utility, but I think an interdependent utility with lots of solar, some storage, some wind, some hydro, pretty good system. And it's a lot more cost effective. If I quote you a system for your house and I say it's going to be $18,000, and then you say, well, how much if I put batteries on it so I can have power during an ice storm? I'll tell them, well, that $18,000 system is now a $28,000 system, and if the ice storm happens in December, you might only have a day's worth of power, and then you're going to be out anyway. So once people understand this, how it really works in the real world based on our experience, they oftentimes say, oh, you know what, my power doesn't go out too often, or if it does go out, maybe I'm going to have a generator that I run for 2 hours every 2 years that can't carry me through a winter ice storm. The electric car and its role in our energy grid is huge. We're talking about how are we going to pay for all this storage? Well, if it's also part of the transportation infrastructure, you're already paying for it, so you get a dual use. One of my heroes in energy is Amory Levins from the Rocky Mountain Institute. I've gotten to talk to him about several items, and one of them is all of our electric cars plugged in at work, plugged in at the grocery store, plugged in at home, and having the infrastructure so that your car will have a certain number, and you'll be able to plug in and charge, and have that go to your bill if you're plugged in at work, so it's fair. But then also you can use your car as storage. So when the grid does go down, you can run your house off your car for a couple hours if you choose to. I've got friends that have done it, and you avoid the warranty on your electric car, but hey, it's fun. The warranty is one of the things. A lot of people ask me how long solar panels last. We don't really know. I've actually done service work on 48-year-old panels, and I've measured them, and they're putting out about 85%, 87% of their original factory specifications. That's pretty darn good. So we sell brand new panels fresh out of the box. They're warranted for 25 years. We usually design around what we call a useful life of 30 years. But nothing magical happens in year 30. They're still working. You might need to re-roof your house. And so when you take them down, you might say, okay, what's the latest and greatest for the next 30 years? Or I might put these back up. They're working just fine. Right now we're running on 100-year-old coal-fired power plants. They just keep putting band-aids on it and keep them running. It makes sense. You've invested in that infrastructure, you might as well use it. It's not like a phone where if you have a phone that's 4 years old, you're suffering because you don't have the latest gadget.
Are the solar panels made in China?
They're made all over the world. Absolutely. China is the world's largest producer of solar panels. Most of the factories, the quality factories, anywhere in the world are mostly automated. It's almost all robotics. There's some hand assembly still going on. Those are typically lower quality because of the quality control of hand soldering and damaging the panels. So there are some people that are still doing manual construction of solar panels. But the automated factories are in China mostly because the government of China supports solar and wants solar. It says, you build a factory, we're going to give you money at 0% or very low percent. We're going to give you $1 billion loan to build a big factory. Our government's not doing that.
Do they export it all, or do they use some?
They're using more and more. They use more than they export. China's going solar in a huge way, and it's great. We need that. India's going solar in a huge way. We need that because they're both big coal-heavy countries. Germany is often touted as the kind of model of what can be done. In Germany, there's times in the year where solar and wind produce more than 100% Germany's power, and they export it to other countries in Europe. Right now, on average, I think Germany is up to about 18% solar, which is pretty amazing. And the utility grid is integrating that. Now they're starting to do storage projects so that they can balance it all out. Anytime anybody says we can't do it, we say, well, the people that are doing it can tell you that it can be done, so let's watch them. Japan's, after Fukushima, Japan said we're going to do big time solar. And so there's actually a slight solar shortage created when Japan started buying so many modules. And the price went up a little bit on solar power. We use solar power panels manufactured in Michigan, as well as in Korea, as well as in China. So it's up to our customers which one they want. A lot of choices.
In the State House in Ohio, it's not very friendly to green energy. Would you say that maybe one of the best counter strategies in a place like Ohio would be to encourage more local aggregation so that local areas could just go forward on green energy regardless of what's happening in the State House?
If the people lead, the leaders will follow. So his question was about Ohio's anti-solar policies. And it is, there's an attack on solar right now. And there's some people that are taking money from the Koch brothers, and they are basically what I would call bought and paid for politicians that are fighting against solar, even though the state of Ohio polls and surveys said that the citizens of Ohio are for solar and for clean energy and for efficiency. They're going against that and doing what campaign donors from out of state are telling them to do. It's sickening to me as somebody who believes in democracy. But we're letting them do that. And if we keep re-electing them, they'll keep doing that. So one of the things that Bruce mentioned was aggregation. What Athens has done with SOPET is actually a model that people are looking at nationwide. Why wait for a central policy from the State House when we can actually take things into our own hands in the city of Boulder, in the city of Denver, in the city of Phoenix? People are saying we're going to go solar and efficiency and do everything we want, build our economy, attract people to our cities. All those things are happening, and aggregation is one of the tools people use. So we're not going to wait around for somebody to let us do it. We're just going to do it. Spread the word. The more people fight against solar, the faster people will go solar. It's happened all over the country and lots of different things. If someone's trying to suppress something, it gives attention to it. It makes people scratch. Why are they against that? Why is that a threat to them? And it brings more attention to solar. It makes solar more visible and more people's radar. So the harder utilities and fossil fuel interests push against solar, the faster the shift to clean energy is coming. So bring it on. The faster they push. We have customers that come to me and say, I want to go solar. I say, what's your motivation? Because they're against solar. I want to go solar to show them. You know, I call it the stick it to the man phenomenon. But they're like tired of being told by a monopoly what they can and can't do, and paying every month a bill that they have to pay with no choice. They say, I'm going to take matters into my own hands, I'm going to make my own power, I'm going to lock in my cost of power, and I'm going to show people it can be done. And then when they find out that they can do that and it's cost effective from the day one, they're like, why doesn't everybody do this? That goes back to that message, spread the word. Solar costs less than coal in Ohio today.
Just like how long they last and what happens when they wear out and they get recycled, or what happens to the chemistry?
So I hate batteries, and because I lived with batteries for 12 years, I replaced my battery bank twice over that 12-year period, and they get worn out because you use more power than you have, and your batteries don't get fully charged. In a perfect world, a battery backup set will last between maybe 8 and 10 years, 8 to 12 years if you're lucky. Most of our customers get maybe 5 years out of their battery backup, their battery life. The good news is batteries are 100% recycled. They're lead typically, and lead is a very easily recycled material. It's very expensive, so people like to recycle it. So they basically smelt the batteries, which is nasty and toxic, but they melt it all down, clean it up, and make new batteries out of it. Now, one of the things that's happening is with electric cars, lithium-ion batteries are starting to be mass-produced in such a large scale that the cost is coming down. And that's what Tesla energy packs are made of. So we're waiting for lithium-ion to be much more cost-effective. Same deal, it's still going to only have a useful life of plus or minus 10 years at the high end. But if it's a grid-type battery and it's fully charged, it's connected to a computer that takes care of it, manages it, it's probably going to last its full useful life. Where batteries fail is where homeowners have to become a power plant manager, and we simply aren't cut out for that. We've got busy lives. We'd rather do other things besides manage our own power plant. And so even when customers say, "Yeah, I'll take care of it," I say, I'm going to try to talk you out of this. I don't want to replace your batteries in 5 years and have you be disappointed. I want you to be happy. And some customers still, eyes wide open, go with batteries. Batteries are a great solution if you've got a remote camp or a remote cabin. It's the only solution a lot of times other than running a generator 24/7. Yeah, lithium-ion batteries don't use lead. There's no lead. it's lithium is one of the metals, and then they still use, it's not acidic, it's a basic chemistry. So there's a liquid in there that's an alkaline. I'm not sure exactly what the chemistry is. Healthier? Yeah, I wouldn't eat either of them. They are sealed. So yeah, there's questions about whether or not lithium ion is sustainable or not. There's causing lots of mining to happen in sensitive areas. The batteries being used in your phones and your computers and your cars are lithium ion. I'd imagine that if you're going to put a chip in somebody's body that I guess maybe you'd want to make it as clean as possible. You know a lot about batteries, but not so much about all the new chemistries. We're actually involved in a project that's putting in 2 big batteries that are as big as trucks, that are part of a big multi-megawatt solar field. And so those batteries actually, their role isn't so much storage, it's to make the grid smoother. It's called harmonic distortion, and to try to keep the grid frequency at 60 hertz. And so they actually are being paid for by the actual PJM organization that runs the utility grid for 8 states. Is putting in a big battery. So who already has solar? I know you do. Are you ready to talk Bernard into solar? Gotta go solar. Who else? You got solar in your building. When are you going to go solar in your half of the building? Before the tax credit goes away. You better do it before the tax credit goes away. There you go, there is that. We're doing solar over on Jackie O's. I'm going to go get a PawPaw here. The prices come down so much that it'd be hard to say we need subsidies for solar. But what I'd like to say is get rid of the subsidies for coal. Get rid of the subsidies for everything else. Give us a level playing field, and we can compete. But we're already competing. Exactly. Solar there's no cost for the fuel. You build the solar plant, the fuel is free. No moving parts. What's not to love? Solar, it's magic. It's amazing.